Tensions between the U.S. and Iran have escalated once more after U.S. Marines seized an Iranian cargo ship in the Gulf of Oman. Washington claims that the vessel tried to get past a U.S. blockade on Iranian ports. Now, Tehran is claiming that the seizure violates a ceasefire agreement set to end on Wednesday. I'll speak with an analyst about the status of those talks in just a moment. But first, this report.
US Marines rappel from helicopters as part of a dramatic seizure of the Iranian cargo ship Tauska. Scenes that wouldn't look out of place in a Hollywood film, now a reality amid the US's conflict with Iran. Tauska's seizure is the first since Washington imposed a blockade on Iranian ports last week. President Trump subsequently took to social media to blame its crew for ignoring repeated US Navy warnings, also confirming that the ship and its contents are now in US custody. It's the latest episode in a months-long conflict between Washington and Tehran, which has had devastating effects on global trade, particularly oil supplies passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has labelled the Tauska seizure maritime piracy and a breach of a two-week ceasefire agreement implemented on April 7th, while promising consequences for the US.
We're still in a state of war. Even though a ceasefire has supposedly been announced, it's one that, unfortunately, has been broken repeatedly by the United States from the very start. Then came statements saying Iran's ports and ships would be targeted, which only made things more complicated.
Tehran has declined to participate in proposed peace talks with the US in the Pakistani capital, Islamabad, citing the naval blockade and perceived unrealistic demands as major obstacles. The ongoing uncertainty over US-Iran negotiations saw global oil prices surge sharply once again on Monday, and there appears to be no end to the conflict in sight.
Middle East analyst Laura Blumenfeld is from Johns Hopkins University. She joins us now. Good to see you, Laura. How much does the U.S. seizure of this Iranian tanker put the ceasefire in jeopardy?
Well, the tanker traffic in the Strait of Hormuz is at a standstill, but the diplomats are on the move. And that's because, as they say in America for decades now, it's the economy stupid. I don't think it endangers the ceasefire. I think it hastens the diplomacy. What America is trying to say to Iran is, if you're going to hold the global economy hostage, we can play that same game with you and turn it around. So although their Iranians have not confirmed that they're going to show up in Islamabad, I believe they will.
So, I mean, but then, you know, let me follow up with you on that and ask you, because for its part, Iran is vowing to retaliate. Do you think that that's an empty threat? And if not, what might that look like?
Well, look, we're watching a game of chicken being played by roosters. Both sides are committed to retaliation, revenge, choose your verb. But at the end of the day, both sides want to see a negotiated agreement. I recall when I was in Iran speaking to Grand Ayatollahs, they said to me quite clearly, our currency and your currency have the same thing printed on it, which is "In God we trust." And I think that's one thing that we're seeing, is that the one thing that we have in common, the West and Iran, is everybody wants to see this kind of global chokehold on the economy to be released.
Iran says that there are no plans for further talks with the United States. I know I'm hearing from you a bit earlier. You seem to disagree. You think that they will indeed show up. They've called the U.S. demands unreasonable and unrealistic as well. What do you make of what we have seen from the talks so far?
Well, we saw the same pattern last time. They did show up. There was uncertainty until the last moment. Yes, there's some kind of fog of diplomacy, but I think that's part of it, because what it was so important for Iran, I would call it the two R's, and one of them is respect, right? They're trying to prove to the world and to the United States especially that their right to enrich should be respected. Their soil is sacred, as their foreign minister said, and so is the right to enrich. That's one thing. And the other thing is relief. They want sanctions relief because that's how the regime stays entrenched. That gives them the leverage over their own people, which at the end of the day is what they're concerned about. I do think they'll show up. From my sources, I hear that there's a 6-point kind of outline that's being negotiated. The JCPOA, which was negotiated under President Obama, was an 18-page deal. So the danger is that both sides are going to look for a quick fix to get out of this kind of crisis, which could create a lot of problems and misunderstandings down the road.
And European allies, when we talk about quick fixes, they have expressed worry about that. They say that Washington's negotiating team is pushing for a swift, a superficial deal that might require months or years of technically complex follow-up talks. I'm wondering if you share those concerns and if you might be able to tell us a little bit more about how you see things.
Well, I think that there's always a bit of a rose-tinted fuzziness for when you go into negotiations, because if you were actually, arguing over every little comma, I know that when I worked on the Israeli-Palestinian negotiating team, the special envoy came back to the office one day exhausted. He said he spent 3 days, in fact, haggling over a comma between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Those talks broke down, and it led to more violence. So yes, there is a kind of willful fuzziness to get to the deal. And so you have to strike that balance of, how specific can you be without things completely breaking down. We've used a lot of sticks to get the Iranians to the table. And yes, it will take some carrots to seal the deal. And those are going to mean concessions.
There are so many analysts who have come on, our program and others, and they say that the Iranians have time on their side. In fact, that they do have the ability to wait it out a little bit more than the Americans do. You spoke a bit about, the economic leverage, the sanctions relief, and I'm wondering how you see the timetable, in fact, for the Iranians, for them to be able to withstand the economic pressure.
Well, yes, the conventional wisdom is that America is a fat and happy land and our people aren't built, for suffering, and that in Iran, it's kind of a strict regime where the folks are just, it's about sort of resistance and resilience. There are political clocks ticking. America has their midterms coming up, but the president is already sort of leveled with the people, saying that the gas prices aren't likely to come down. So this is ultimately United States about one man, President Trump, and he is dug in. So we can't really make any predictions about who's going to give first.
Laura, I know it's perhaps not a fair question because there are so many moving parts to this conflict, and we don't really know how it's going to end. But with the current set of conditions and the things that you are seeing right now on the ground, where do you think that this conflict leaves Iran, the United States, and the region at large?
Well, the region at large is looking for alternatives. Everybody's scrambling for a plan B. The Gulf countries are coming together like never before, not only diplomatically, but also militarily, to create more self-reliance to defend themselves, as they've been left so vulnerable. Also economically, folks are looking for overland routes to bring oil from the Gulf across to Europe overland through Turkey, Jordan, Syria, and finally, fascinatingly, Israel and Lebanon. They may end up striking a peace deal from this god-awful war. Their ambassadors are set to meet again this week. So there is a lot of moving parts, and hopefully in a positive direction.
Laura Blumenfeld, Johns Hopkins University, thank you so much. We appreciate it.